Hi guys, welcome to a new part of Android tutorial. Today we are going to learn about the database concepts in Android. Android contains a built-in database called the SQLite. So in this part I am going to explain how to create a database in SQLite, how to create a table in that database, how to insert some data into that SQLite database. I will explain all these concepts using a complete working example. So here in my Eclipse IDE, I am going to create a new project for demonstrating the database in Android. So choose the file option and choose the project. It's an Android application project. Click next. Here we need a project name, an application name. I name it as database demo and change the package name as com.database demo. Click next. Nothing to change in this window. Again click next. So here also there is no need to change anything. Click next. Here I create a blank activity. Again click next. Here is the activity name and layout name. Finally click finish. Now the IDE creates the project in the project explorer. Here is the project database demo and two files are open on the editor window, the main activity and the layout file. This is the layout file. Choose the graphical option of that layout. You can see there is only one text view is present on that layout file. We don't need that, so I just delete it. And here I am going to add some more view components. So go to the text field option, choose a plain text. I need one more. Now I choose two text field. Again choose two buttons, add two buttons here. Again add another button. Okay, now go to the XML version of this layout. Here is the first edit text. I change the ID of the first edit text as name. Also I am going to add an hint for the edit text. Android hint, enter, name here. Here is the second edit text. I change it as email. Also had an hint for the second edit text also. Android hint equal to enter email here. Okay, now there are two buttons. This is the first button. I change the ID of the first button as save. Change the text of the first button as save data. Now here is the second button. Change the ID of the second button as load and change the text of the second button as load data. I save it. Now take care. All the graphical layouts are altered. Here is the load button. Here is the save button. Here is the name field. Here is the email field. Okay, I just align the components, few components. This is the name field, here is the email field, and finally here is the first button save data, and here is the second button load data. So whenever user enters some values to this two field and press save data, the data is saved into the database, and whenever user click the load data, that saved data is retrieved by can display. So now we need to code this. So I save it and go to the main activity.java file. There are two buttons, so we need to create an object for that button. I save and load. Also there is two edit text are present there. Edit text, name and email. Okay, we need to import button. Okay, now I'm going to connect the buttons and edit text into the ID provided on the layout file. So save is equal to using the method find the view by ID r.id dot save button. Now load is equal to using the same method find the view by ID r.id dot load. Now the first edit text name is equal to again same method find the view by ID r.id dot name. Now email is equal to find the view by ID id dot email. All these are objects, so we need to cast it into corresponding class name. So first one is the save button, so cast it into button. Again load is another button, so cast it into button. Now name is an edit text, so cast it into edit text. Email is also email is an edit text, so cast it into edit text. Okay, now we just connect the all these objects to the ID provided on the layout file. Now whenever user click the save button, the data is saved into the database, so we need to create that database and table for saving the data. So we need under class, so right click the package on the src folder and choose a class option. Here is the window that appear for creating a new Java class in the Eclipse IDE. So here I am going to create a new Java class with a name data handler. I just create a new Java class called data handler and click finish. Now the IDE creates a new Java class called data handler. Now I am going to add some string, declare some variables here. First one is we need two variables to save email and name. So I'm going to create that variables public static final string name is equal to name. In second variable public static final string email is equal to email. Now we need a table, so we need a table name for the table. So here it is public static final string table name. I give it as my table. Of course we need a database, so we need a name for the database. So here it is public static final string database name. I give it as my database. Okay, now we need a database version, so here it is public static final int database version is equal to 1. I just declare some variables here: name, email, database name, table name, and database version. Okay, now we need another string variable for creating the database. That means we need a query for create the database. So here it is: public static final string database create is equal to, I'm going to specify the query here: create table. Here table name is my table, and here is the field. First field is name. It's a text type and it is of not null. And second field is email. It is also a text type and it is also not null. Okay, now we need the semicolon here and we need the end the statements here. Okay, now we just create a query for creating the database create table. Query for creating the table create table my table. First field is name, second field is email, both are text type. Now we are going to create that database, so we need an inner static class called db helper, database helper class. So here I am going to create that database helper class, private static class database helper extends SQLite open helper. I just create an inner class, inner static class SQLite database helper, which extends the SQLite open helper. We need to add some unimplemented methods here. So there are two unimplemented methods are added. First one is the onCreate method and second one is the onUpCreate method. We use this onCreate method for creating the table in that database. Okay, now we need to create an object of this database on the outer class, object of the inner class on the outer class. So here I just create that object database helper. I give it as db helper. Also I'm going to create an object of the context class, context. I give it as ctx. Now I am going to create a constructor for the outer class, that means data handler class. So here it is: public's data handler. Here I just use a argument for this constructor. It's an argument of context class, context ctx. Now I initialize this context variable here, this dot ctx is equal to ctx. We need to import that context class here. Okay, now I am going to initialize this object database. That means this is the object of the inner static class. So now here I am going to initialize that db helper is equal to new database helper, new database helper. I pass this context object also. Now we need to create a constructor for the database helper class. So here it is, public database helper. It contain an argument of the context class ctx. Okay, now we are going to create that database here using a superclass method. That means using the SQLite open helper, one of the method of the SQLite open helper. So here we just call that method super. First we need to provide the name of the database here. First in this method, first we need to provide the name of the database. Sorry, first we need to provide that context object. Second, we need to provide that name of the database name, and for the third argument we provide null, and for the final argument we provide that database version here. Executing this statement, that means whenever we initialize this object, the database is created. That means we just using a method of the SQLite, not method, it is we using the constructor of the SQLite open helper. In that constructor we actually create the database. Okay, so here you can see there is another method, another on override method is present called on upgrade. So we need to add some statement here also. So if the database is already present, we need to before upgradation we need to delete that database. So db dot execute SQL, we need to provide the query for dropping the table here. I give the query here drop table if exist, drop table if exist, that table name. Here table name is my table. Okay, drop table if exist my table. So if the table is previously exists, then it will be drop. After that we have to create that database, create that table. So we need to call this onCreate method. So here I am going to create that onCreate, call that onCreate method. Sorry, onCreate. Here is the object of the database, object of the SQLite database. Okay, now we just invoke this method. Now we are going to add the statement for create the table here. For creating table here, we are going to add the statements for creating the table. So here we using the same object of the SQLite database. Here you can see that we already get an argument of SQLite database. So by using that object db dot execute SQL, we need to provide that string for creating the database, create query for the database. Here is the database create query, and here is the database create query. So we need to add that. Actually it is not database create, it is table create. It's change it as table create. Table create. Okay, we just create the table here. we need to add it into a try catch block. Here the exception is SQL exception, and print out the stack trace of this exception. Print stack trace. Okay, now we successfully create that uh, database in our just create that table in our database. Now we need to insert values into this database. Before that, we need to open that database, so we need to add some method for open that database. Okay, now we need to add some methods for open the database. Okay, before inserting data into the database, we need to open the database. So now here I'm going to add the method for open the database, so that we need an object of the SQLite database. So here I'm going to create an object of the SQLite database. SQLite database, I name it as DB. Okay, now make sure that all the methods for inserting open the database, insertion and deletion are uh, inside the outer class, not the inner static class. So the inner static class is open here and it end here. Now I am going to create the method for open the database. Public, it will return object of the outer class. Here the name of the outer class is database data handler. So that is the return type of this method, data handler. Open. Now we need to use the SQLite object for open the database. So here db is equal to, by using the object of the inner class, here the object of the inner class is db helper. DB helper dot something errors are present here. So sorry, actually this method is also on the inner class, so this is not declared here. Actually the inner class is ended here, so we need to declare that method here. DB helper dot get writable database, using the method called get writable database. Now we return this object, so return this. Now we create a method for open the database. Now we create methods for inserting data into the database. Before that, we need another method for closing the database. After the interaction with the database, we need to close it. So here is the method for closing the database, public void close. db helper dot close, using the method close method. We just create a method for closing the database. Now we are going to create the method for inserting data into the table. So it will return a long method as a result, public long. I just create that method name as insert data. You can use any method name. Here I just name it as insert data. Here to take two arguments, name and email, string email, because in our application there is two text field are present, name and email. Now for inserting data, we need to create another class object called content values. So here I'm going to create object of the content values. Content values. Content is equal to new content values. We just create an object of the content value class. Now we are going to add each of these field into the content object. So content dot, there is a method called put. There is a string key and a string value. First one is you need to provide the key. First one is first variable is the name. So the key is name and value is here. This is the value argument. Provide that name. Second data content dot put. The second field is email. So this is the key for email. And here is the value email. Okay, now we are going to insert that data into the database. So using return we using the object of the SQLite data SQLite. Here is the object of the SQLite. What is that? Okay, DB is the object of the SQLite database. By using that object, we are going to insert this data into the table. So DB dot insert. First, you need to provide the name of the table here, table name, and here is the null clock hog. We have to provide that null, and that is the object of the content values. Here the object is content. Okay, now we just add, in this statement we add that data in the content object into the database, and it will return a long value after the successful insertion of the data. Now we need to create the method for uh, retrieving all the values from the database. So here is the method for retrieving all the values from the database. Actually retrieving the values in the form of an object of a cursor. So here the return type of that method is cursor. So here is the method public cursor. Public cursor. I give the method name as return data. There is no arguments for this method, and open that method. Here we also using the same object of the SQLite database. So db dot return db dot query. First is the name of the table. Here the table name is, this is the key for table name, and here we provide the columns. Here I'm going to create a new string, array string here, new string, and provide that column names here. First column name is name, and second column name is email, okay, name and email. Actually this is not, this is inside this, name email. Now here is the selection arguments. There is no selection arguments are present. Before that we add another null value here. There is no selection arguments, so provide null for it. There is no group by clause. Provide null. There is no having clause. Provide null. There is no ordered by clause are present here. Also null for that. Now these statements return the object of cursor. We need to import object of cursor here, class for cursor here. Now we create the methods for open the database, closing the database, inside data into the table. Now this is the method for returning all the data from that database. Guys, please subscribe my channel for getting more video updates. The remaining portion of this topic is explained in the next part of this tutorial. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part of this tutorial.